Many people say that they're going to write a biography, and many people fail to do so. Mim not only has decided to write a biography, but what has made it a success, and I'm not talking about a commercial success, I'm talking about a success as a piece of writing, is the way in which it was written.
I called the book Diary of a Teddy Boy because my first really exciting thing on the street to see was a teddy boy. After the war, everything was grey. You know, the women had lost their husbands and their children in the war, and it took a few years for this to get itself together, and the streets were grey. And suddenly in the 50s, these guys appeared on the street looking like peacocks. They were amazing, terrific, incredible suits, incredible haircuts, incredible shoes. They were marvellous, and I thought, my God, I want to be a teddy boy. How do their parents let them dress like that? And I strived desperately to become one. And I didn't stay one very long, but I saw them as the catalyst for the whole movement that took place afterwards, right the way up from beatniks and mods and rockers, and the whole movement all stemmed from these wonderful teddy boys who took the plunge into the world of colour.
Absolutely brilliant. It hits it, it just touches every nerve I ever felt tingle of the time.
After posing for a while in the bathroom mirror and adding a final squirt of Brill cream, a liberal dash of Old Spice and one final comb of the hair, I stood transformed. The DA was flying. The suit was magnificent.
Some of these characters were really quite incredible.
Diana always adored him. So she said, you've got to meet Mim Scala. The Mim Scala.
I'm a very old friend of Mim, and I love him. I've known him since I'm 14 years old.
My one problem was how to get out of the flat. Over the past few weeks, Teddy Boys had stabbed several people to death on Clapham Common and staged numerous gang fights all over London. They were about as popular with parents as head lice. The only exit was through the shop where my dad, my brother, Uncle Joe and Cousin Julio sat counting money at one of the tables. I could hear the clink as I stood on the iron fire escape that ran down the back of the building. I opened the door and walked with the swagger of a fully fledged Ted towards the exit. My crepes crept across the terrazzo floor of the cafe. My reflection in the pink mirrors, enhanced by the neon ceiling lighting, was a vision I dreamed about. I looked the business. As I drew level with the concentrating money counters, one of them looked up. It was my dad.
How scary were the Cray twins? They weren't scary until you knew they were scary. And they usually turned you on to that fact with some little vignette. In my case, my first encounter was when I was running the Shemmy Games. And I had a very big game which was populated by some terrific punters, Lucian Freud and Francis Bacon, Lord Derby, all sorts of really big guys. And I was in the middle of this playing, pretending to be Rick from Casablanca. And there I was in my small little world, hustling a Shemmy game. And one day, these two guys in brown suits were in the game, at the game, lost some money, very nice, very charming, paid up. But on the way out, they asked to have a word with me in private. And I had no idea who they were. And they virtually said to me that they were also running a Shemmy game and that mine was better than theirs and that I'd been down-mouthing their game, which I hadn't, but this didn't matter. So I was rather indignant and said, I'm terribly sorry, I don't know anything about you guys. Anyway, they said, well, if we're here again, we'll probably break your legs. And they said, thanks, good game, very nice, thank you very much, and split. I made an immediate inquiry as to who these guys were, and I was told on no uncertain terms that I shouldn't upset them. And that was scary, because they told me what they did afterwards.
I loved it. I thought it was. I think it's great they kind of wrote it from the heart, and I loved. Actually, there's a whole bit where I lost touch with him, so it's quite nice catching up on that as well.
Nice whistle, Scala. It's a Toby, innit? Yes, I replied proudly, sliding my hands into the jacket pockets. Dum-Dum sucked in a lot of air and made a string of sounds deep down in the back of his throat. He then produced a cutthroat razor from his inside pocket and neatly cut the bottom button off my jacket. He thinks your coat's got too many buttons, Corkies. said, sipping his tea. Yeah, I thought so too, said I, hoping that this was as violent as my initiation would get.
Loads of spectacular things happened to me in the most amazing ways. I got invited to New York in 1967 to stay with this wonderful mad girl, and one of her good friends was Salvador Dali. And I'd basically gone to look at a play called Hair. It was running off Broadway, and Michael White, the producer, had told me to bid up to 10 grand for the rights to this thing. So I announced that I was going to go and see Hair at the Panther Theatre off Broadway, and Salvador said, "Oh, we'll all come along." So this whole entourage turned up to see this thing, and he hated it. He thought it was a load of shit. And who was I to argue with him? So I took the maestro's advice and turned it down. Anyway, as a result of this, he invited me to New Year's Eve dinner, and my friend Marlena. So we turn up at his hotel, which is the St. Regis, and he's got a whole suite of rooms in a big line, and they wheel, in the St. Regis, they used to wheel the walls open so you could make the suite into more and more and more and more rooms. And I was astonished to find myself in this great gallery of rooms with a fireplace at the far end, millions of candles burning, a choir boy's cassock, 25 foot long, lying on the floor spread out like a crucifix, and 3 little garden tables with 2 chairs each for our meal. And Marlene and I arrived first. There's nobody else in this room, just the glittering candles. It was a very weird situation. So we're having a laugh, and we sit down and wait, and the next guests were the painter, Matty Clairvine, and his girlfriend. Matty had just done all those wonderful Santana album covers. So Matty came in, and we had a little chat, and then finally Salvador and Gala appeared. And we were ushered to our seats, but they were so far apart from each other that you couldn't speak to each other. So he was in the middle table, I was over there, Matty was there, and we were sitting, and we have a wonderful meal, but we can't speak to anybody else. So it's this weird Dali happening. And the meal's terrific, everything gets wheeled away, and as the meal comes to a close, the doors at the far end open, and an entire choir of young Portuguese choir boys, beautifully dressed with their hair smarmed down in white cassocks, came into the room, lined up around the crucifix giant cassock. Tiny little boy with a soprano voice climbed into the neck so his head was like a pea, and he sang this most incredible music, and we sat there absolutely dumbfounded at this vision. They sang, disappeared, the doors all opened all the way down this. In came the paparazzi, Salvador posed, millions of photographs were taken of him, and that was the end. He said, "Thank you very much for coming to dinner," and disappeared. It's one of the great moments of my life, with Salvador happening. It was like being in one of his paintings, and it was fabulous. Magic.